The massive crystal dome of the Galactic Council chamber sparkled under the light of three suns. Inside, representatives from 200 species sat in rising circular tiers, their voices growing louder with each passing moment. At the center of the chamber, a hologram showed a massive dark mass moving through space, consuming everything in its path. Ambassador Tom Walker watched from the human section, his weathered face carefully neutral. After 30 years of representing humanity to the galaxy, he had learned when to speak and when to observe. Right now, observation told him everything he needed to know about the crisis. The council leader, a tall being with crystalline skin, raised all four arms for silence. The void entity has consumed 3 solar systems in the past month. We must take action before it reaches populated space. From the warrior section, a massive reptilian being stood up. Its scales gleamed like polished armor as it spoke. Then let us destroy it. Send the combined fleets of the warrior races. We will crush this threat with our might. Cheers erupted from several sections. Walker noticed how the smaller, less warlike species remained silent. They knew, as he did, that rushing in without information was foolish. And how many ships do you plan to sacrifice learning about its capabilities? Walker's voice carried clearly through the chamber. He hadn't shouted, but decades of diplomatic work had taught him how to make himself heard. The warrior representatives turned toward him, some literally baring their teeth. The reptilian speaker's tail lashed in agitation. Typical human cowardice. You would hide and watch while worlds die. Walker stood slowly, straightening his simple blue uniform. I would gather information to save lives. We don't even know what this entity is. Is it alive? Is it a weapon? Is it running from something worse? He gestured to the hologram. Look at its path. It's not random. It's following a straight line through space. The human speaks sense. This came from one of the ancient races, a being of pure energy contained in a mechanical shell. But who will investigate? Our fastest ships cannot outrun it if discovered. The reptilian warrior laughed, a harsh sound like grinding stones. Humans? Obviously. They are experts at running away. Instead of showing anger, Walker smiled. Yes, we are. We're also experts at surviving, which is why humanity still exists despite being one of the physically weaker species in the galaxy. He turned to address the council leader. I propose a mission. One of our stealth ships, crewed by experienced reconnaissance personnel. We'll observe the entity, gather data, and report back with actionable intelligence. Waste of time. The warrior representative roared. While you watch and hide, more worlds will die. And how many more will die if we attack blindly and fail? Walker countered. He turned slowly, meeting the eyes of various representatives. Humanity learned long ago that charging into battle without information is not bravery, it's suicide. We survived on our homeworld by being cautious, by learning about dangers before confronting them. Those survival instincts are not cowardice. They're wisdom earned through millennia of evolution. The council chamber grew quiet. The hologram continued its silent display of the void entity's destruction. Walker waited, knowing that sometimes silence was the strongest argument. Finally, the council leader spoke. The human proposal has merit. A small ship would have the highest chance of gathering intelligence without detection. And when this human ship runs away at the first sign of danger, the warrior representative's voice dripped with scorn. Walker's response was calm. Then we'll have learned something valuable about the entity's detection capabilities. Every piece of information increases our chances of stopping it. He paused. Unless, of course, you're afraid that our cowardly approach might succeed where brute force would fail. The warrior representative's scales flushed dark with anger, but before it could respond, the council leader raised all 4 arms again. The decision is made. Ambassador Walker, you have 3 planetary rotations to prepare your mission. Choose your crew carefully. The lives of billions may depend on what they discover. Walker bowed slightly and left the chamber, already composing a message to Captain Jack Miller. The captain's Prudence was the best stealth ship in the human fleet, and Miller had a knack for getting into, and more importantly, out of dangerous situations. As he walked through the crystal corridors, Walker smiled slightly. The warrior races would never understand that sometimes the bravest thing you could do was admit you needed to know more before acting. But soon, they would learn why humanity's cowardice had helped them survive long enough to reach the stars. The stealth ship Prudence drifted silently through space, its dark hull absorbing nearly all light. In the command center, Captain Jack Miller watched the main screen with steady eyes. The void entity loomed ahead, a mass of swirling darkness larger than anything he'd seen before. "Sensors are picking up some strange readings, Captain," said Mary Reed, the ship's engineer. Her fingers moved quickly across the holographic display. It's not just absorbing light. It's absorbing everything. Radio waves, cosmic radiation, even gravity itself." Miller nodded slowly. The warrior races would have already attacked by now, probably with their biggest weapons. Instead, the Prudence hung back at a safe distance, gathering data. Some might call it cowardice. Miller called it staying alive. "Alex, what do you make of those energy patterns?" he asked the science officer. Alex Grant leaned forward, adjusting his glasses out of habit, even though they were designed never to slip. "There's a pattern to it, sir. It's not random destruction. Look here." He pointed to a series of waves on his screen. "These energy pulses, they're regular, almost like a heartbeat," Miller finished. His eyes widened slightly. "It's alive." The bridge crew fell silent. They'd all seen strange things in space, but a living creature this massive was beyond anything in their experience. The void entity continued its steady movement, consuming another asteroid field in its path. "Sir," Mary's voice was urgent, "I'm detecting something else. The matter it's consuming. It's not being destroyed. It's being processed somehow. There are organized structures inside that thing." Miller straightened in his chair. This was why humans survived, not by rushing in, but by watching and learning. "Alex, can you get us a detailed scan of those structures? Mary, monitor for any sign it's detected us." The next hour was tense as they carefully maneuvered closer, their stealth systems working at maximum capacity. The scan slowly revealed more details about the massive entity. "Captain," Alex said finally, his voice filled with wonder. "Those structures, their habitats, thousands of them, maybe millions, and they're occupied." Before Miller could respond, a message came through from the Council. The warrior races were demanding immediate action. Their fleet was assembling to attack the entity. "They'll kill them all," Mary whispered. "If that thing is really carrying passengers." Miller's jaw tightened. Sometimes being brave meant standing up to your allies. "Open a channel to the Council." Priority message. The Council leader's crystalline face appeared on screen. Behind it, Miller could see the warrior representatives arguing loudly. "Council leader," Miller said firmly, "the void entity is not a weapon. It's a vessel, a living ship carrying what appears to be millions of refugees. If we attack it, we'll be committing mass murder." The warrior representatives erupted in outrage. "Lies," roared the reptilian leader. "More human cowardice. They seek to delay while more systems are consumed. Look at the data." Miller shot back, transmitting their scans. "Those are artificial structures inside it. And look at these energy patterns. They're not random destruction. They're systematic gathering of resources. It's feeding itself and its passengers." The council chamber erupted in debate. Miller waited, knowing that rushing to speak rarely helped win arguments. Finally, the council leader raised its arms for silence. "Captain Miller, can you prove these are refugees? Why would they not communicate?" Just then, Alex called out excitedly, "Captain, I'm detecting patterns in the energy pulses. They're not just regular, they're mathematical. Prime numbers, geometric sequences. This isn't just a heartbeat. It's trying to talk. Miller allowed himself a small smile. Council leader, with your permission, we'd like to attempt communication. And there's something else you should know. He paused, making sure he had everyone's attention. Based on its trajectory and speed, this entity isn't just wandering. It's running from something. And anything that could scare a being this powerful. He let the implication hang in the air. The council chamber grew very quiet. Sometimes, Miller thought, the bravest thing you could do was admit that there might be something out there worth running from. The Prudence had been following the void entity for 3 days now. Captain Miller hadn't slept much, but he couldn't bring himself to leave the bridge. They were making history. The first real contact with whatever civilization lived inside that massive living ship. Got it. Alex's excited voice broke the quiet. The mathematical patterns are getting clearer. They're not just showing intelligence, they're giving us a key to their language. Miller leaned forward. Show me. The main screen filled with cascading numbers and symbols. Mary joined them from her engineering station, her eyes scanning the patterns quickly. It's beautiful, she said softly. They're using universal constants as a base. The speed of light, Planck's constant, the golden ratio. Anyone with basic science would understand this. Send them P, Miller ordered. First 100 digits. The crew waited tensely as their message was transmitted using carefully controlled energy pulses. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then the void entity's energy patterns changed. They're responding. Alex's fingers flew across his console. They're sending us images. Converting now. The main screen flickered and filled with strange geometric shapes that slowly resolved into recognizable pictures. Miller felt his breath catch in his throat. The images showed a beautiful world, filled with crystalline cities that seemed to float in the air. Then the images changed. They watched in horror as bright, burning beings of pure energy descended on that world. The crystalline cities shattered. The surface burned. The destroyers, Mary whispered. That's what they're running from. More images followed. The survivors building the massive living ship, gathering their people, fleeing just ahead of the burning creatures. World after world, they ran, gathering more refugees from other civilizations that had been attacked. Incoming transmission from the council, the communications officer announced. The council leader appeared on a side screen. Captain Miller, the warrior fleet is still demanding action. They say your delay is putting more systems at risk. We need proof of your claims. Miller straightened in his chair. Sending you the communication data now, council leader. The void entity is carrying refugees from at least 30 different civilizations. They're running from a species they call the destroyers, beings of pure energy that consume entire worlds. He paused as more images came through from the entity. And there's more. The systems this ship has been consuming, it's not destroying them. It's gathering resources to sustain its passengers and keep ahead of the destroyers. It's actually protecting those systems by removing any trace of its passage. The destroyers can't follow what they can't detect. The reptilian warrior representative's voice boomed from off-screen. Convenient stories, more human excuses for inaction. No, Miller said firmly. This is why gathering intelligence matters. If we'd attacked, we have damaged the ship. Millions would have died, and the destroyers would have found them. We'd have done their work for them. A new set of images appeared, showing the destroyers obliterating a warrior fleet that looked remarkably similar to the one now gathering to attack the void entity. The message was clear. Council leader, Miller continued, these refugees have been fighting the destroyers for years. Direct confrontation doesn't work, but they've survived by being careful, by running when necessary, by choosing their battles. Sound familiar? The council chamber grew quiet. Even the warrior representatives seemed subdued by the images of their counterparts being destroyed. What do you propose, Captain Miller? The council leader asked. Let us continue communication. They've survived this long. They must know more about fighting the destroyers than anyone. And he smiled slightly. They seemed to appreciate our cautious approach. They're calling us the wise ones in their messages. The reptilian warrior made a sound of disgust. They call you wise because you run and hide like they do. Sometimes, Miller replied calmly, the ones who run and hide are the only ones who live long enough to find a real solution. New images were appearing on the screen. Technical data, weapons specifications, tactical information. The refugees were sharing everything they knew about the destroyers. Miller nodded to himself. The cowardly humans had just made first contact with potentially the most important allies the galaxy had ever seen. And they'd done it not with weapons or displays of courage, but with patience, caution, and the wisdom to know when to wait and watch. Captain Miller stood before the emergency council session, his uniform neat despite 3 days without proper rest. The massive screens behind him showed detailed scans of the void entity and the approaching destroyer fleet. The refugees have given us valuable information, he began. The destroyers aren't invincible. They're energy beings, yes, but they can be fought, just not in the way we're used to fighting. The warrior representatives stirred uneasily. The images of their alternate universe counterparts being destroyed had shaken their confidence, but not their pride. What do you propose, Captain? The council leader asked. The destroyer fleet will arrive in less than 2 weeks. Miller nodded to Mary, who stepped forward with a holographic projector. A complex series of quantum networks appeared in the air between them. The refugees have been running because they had no choice, Miller explained. But now they have something they didn't have before. Allies. We propose creating a safe zone. Mary highlighted a section of space on the map. This region has unique properties: heavy quantum interference, natural radiation fields, and most importantly, a cluster of dying stars. The destroyers rely on absorbing energy. We can use that against them. The reptilian warrior leader's tail lashed in frustration. More hiding, more running. Where is the glory in this? Miller's voice remained calm. Glory won't save those refugees, or our worlds. He turned to address the full council. The plan has 3 parts. First, we lay a trail of quantum beacons to guide the void entity to the safe zone. Their ship is massive. It can't change course quickly. We need to give them a clear path. The hologram shifted, showing the beacon network. Second, we position our fleets here and here. Red dots appeared at strategic points, not to fight, to evacuate any populated systems in the void entity's path. Yes, some systems will be stripped of resources, but the planets themselves will survive. The people will survive. And third, the council leader leaned forward, its crystalline form catching the light. Third, Miller's eyes hardened slightly. We prepare our trap. The destroyers follow energy signatures. The void entity leaves a trail they can detect. That's how they've been hunting it. But what if we gave them a more tempting target? Mary adjusted the hologram again, showing a complex network of energy signatures. We can create false trails, multiple paths that all lead to the safe zone. The destroyers will have to split up to follow them all. And then, the reptilian warrior demanded, we still must fight them. Yes, Miller agreed, surprising everyone. But we'll fight them on our terms, in a region of space where their energy absorption powers work against them, where we can use the dying stars as weapons, where we have the advantage. The council chamber erupted in discussion. Miller waited patiently, remembering his first lesson in space combat. Sometimes the best position is the one that makes your enemy come to you. Finally, the council leader raised its arms for silence. This plan, it requires incredible coordination, precise timing. If even one part fails, that's why it will work, Miller said firmly. The destroyers are used to their victims either running in panic or fighting in blind courage. They've never faced an enemy that plans, that prepares, that thinks ahead. They've never faced humans. You sound very confident, Captain, the reptilian warrior said, but there was less hostility in its voice now. Miller allowed himself a small smile. Confidence isn't the opposite of caution. Humanity learned that lesson long ago. Every major battle in our history was won not just by courage, but by preparation, strategy, and the wisdom to know when to wait and when to strike. He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of each representative. The refugees trusted us because we were the first species they met who didn't either run in fear or attack blindly. They recognized in us what they learned through centuries of running. That true survival requires both courage and wisdom. The council chamber grew quiet as the implications sank in. The hologram continued to spin slowly, showing their complex plan in all its careful detail. "Very well, Captain," the council leader said finally. "Begin your preparations, and may your human caution prove as valuable as you claim." Miller nodded, already mentally preparing his next steps. The real test wasn't in making the plan. It was in being ready when that plan inevitably faced reality. They came like living stars, burning holes in the fabric of space itself. The destroyers had arrived. Captain Miller watched from the bridge of the Prudence as the first wave of energy beings tore through the quantum wake left by the void entity. His ship hung silent in the shadow of a gas giant, systems running at minimum power. "Multiple contacts," Mary reported quietly. "At least 30 destroyer entities in the first wave. More following." The warrior race's fleet, ignoring all warnings and plans, surged forward to meet the threat. Their massive warships, bristling with weapons, looked like toys compared to the burning forms of the destroyers. "They're going to get themselves killed," Miller said softly. He keyed his comm. "All human ships, maintain position. Stick to the plan." The warrior fleet opened fire. Energy beams and plasma torpedoes streaked across space and were simply absorbed by the destroyers. The burning beings grew brighter, stronger. Then the destroyers struck back. It was over in seconds. Where proud warships had flown, only cooling debris remained. The warrior races had learned too late that courage alone wasn't enough. "Energy spike," Alex called out. "They're scanning for the void entity's trail." Miller nodded. This was what they had prepared for. Launch the beacons. All ships. Execute pattern Delta. Across the sector, hidden human ships activated quantum beacons. Dozens of false energy trails bloomed in space, each one mimicking the void entity's signature. The destroyers paused, their burning forms flickering as they detected the multiple paths. "They're splitting up," Mary reported, "just as we predicted. Their hunting instinct is overriding their caution." Miller watched as the destroyer fleet separated, each group following a different trail. His crew had spent days laying these false paths, each one leading to a carefully prepared trap. "First group approaching Kill Zone Alpha," Alex announced. "Second group diverging towards Beta. Third." A sudden burst of energy cut him off. One of the destroyers had found a hidden human ship. The small vessel didn't try to fight. Instead, it executed a series of rapid jumps, leading its pursuer deeper into the prepared battlefield. "They're following the escape patterns," Miller noted with satisfaction. The human ships weren't running in panic. Each retreat was calculated, each jump designed to separate and isolate the destroyers. "Sir," Mary's voice was urgent, "the quantum wake is destabilizing their energy matrix. The false trails are actually weakening them." This was what the refugees' data had shown them. The destroyers' greatest strength was also their weakness. They absorbed energy to grow stronger, but the right kind of energy could disrupt their very structure. "All ships, begin Phase 2, Miller ordered. "Remember your training. No heroics. No direct engagement. Lead them deeper into the quantum field." The space battle that followed would later be studied in military academies across the galaxy. The human fleet executed a complex dance of calculated retreats and strategic withdrawals. Each time the destroyers thought they had cornered their prey, the human ships would slip away, leading them through another quantum wake, another disruptive field. "Destroyer energy signatures dropping by 30%, Alex reported. The quantum interference is working. A massive energy burst lit up the sector as one of the destroyers tried to absorb a quantum beacon. Instead of growing stronger, its form wavered and destabilized. That's the proof we needed, Miller said grimly. Send the data to the Council. Show them that the destroyers can be beaten, not by charging in, but by using their nature against them. The battle continued, but it was no longer a slaughter. The human fleet's cowardly tactics were wearing down the mighty destroyers, proving that intelligence and strategy could overcome even the most powerful enemy. Sir, Mary called out, the void entity is nearly in position. The refugees' ship will reach the safe zone in 6 hours. Miller nodded. They just had to hold out, to keep the destroyers distracted and weakened. Sometimes victory didn't come from destroying your enemy. It came from making sure those you protected could reach safety. Continue the pattern, he ordered. Let's show the galaxy that running away isn't always about fear. Sometimes it's about leading your enemy exactly where you want them to go. The massive void entity approached the safe zone, its dark form now visibly damaged from the long chase. Inside the Prudence, Captain Miller watched the final preparations for humanity's greatest gamble. All EMP generators in position, Mary reported from her engineering station. She looked tired but determined. The dying star's radiation is providing perfect cover for the energy signature. The plan was simple in theory, nearly impossible in practice. They had transformed an entire sector of space into a giant trap, using the dying star's natural radiation and carefully placed EMP devices to create a web of energy-disrupting fields. Status of the destroyers, Miller asked. Alex checked his readings. Still following our false trails, sir. The quantum interference has weakened them, but they're adapting. We have maybe 2 hours before they figure out what we're doing. Miller nodded. That was the problem with intelligent enemies. They learned. The destroyers had already started to avoid the quantum wakes that had proven so effective earlier. Message from the void entity, the communications officer announced. They're ready to begin their part. This was the riskiest part of the plan. The refugees' massive living ship would act as bait, drawing the destroyers into the perfect position. If anything went wrong, millions would die. All ships, battle positions, Miller ordered. Remember, this isn't about fighting. It's about timing. The human fleet moved into formation, each ship taking its carefully planned position. They had trained for this moment for days, running simulations until every captain knew their role perfectly. The void entity began to move, its enormous form following the path they had prepared. As it traveled, it left behind a trail of energy that lit up space like a beacon. The destroyers couldn't resist such a target. They're taking the bait, Alex reported. All destroyer groups are converging on the void entity's position. Miller watched the tactical display as dozens of burning forms rushed toward what they thought was their prey. The destroyers had lost their earlier caution, driven by what seemed like a perfect opportunity. Now comes the hard part, Miller said quietly. Mary, begin the power-up sequence. The hidden EMP generators began to charge, drawing power from the dying stars around them. The energy buildup was enormous, but the star's natural radiation masked it from detection. Void entity reaching position Alpha, Alex announced. Destroyers will be in the kill zone in 3 minutes. Miller keyed his fleet-wide comm. All ships prepare for Phase 3. Remember your escape routes. Timing is everything. The next 3 minutes felt like hours. The void entity moved steadily forward, appearing to struggle, appearing vulnerable. The destroyers followed, their burning forms casting harsh light across the sector. Kill zone in 10 seconds, Mary called out. 9, 8. Miller watched the tactical display, his hand hovering over the command console. 7, 6, 5. The destroyers were almost in position, their formation tight as they closed in for the kill. 4, 3, 2. All ships, emergency jump now. Miller's command cut through the countdown. The human fleet vanished in a coordinated flash of jump drives. At the same moment, the void entity's apparent struggle ceased. It surged forward with surprising speed, clearing the kill zone just as Mary's voice called out, "1." Miller pressed the command key. The sector exploded with energy as every EMP generator activated simultaneously. The dying star's radiation amplified the effect, creating a massive wave of disrupting energy that caught the destroyers at their most vulnerable moment, when they were clustered together, focused entirely on their prey. The burning beings tried to absorb the energy, but it was too much, too fast, and of exactly the right type to disrupt their very essence. Their forms began to break apart, their burning light flickering and fading. Direct hit on 80% of destroyer forces, Alex reported, his voice tight with tension. Their energy signatures are destabilizing. The void entity is clear, Mary added. They've reached the safe zone. Miller watched as the mighty destroyers, who had terrorized the galaxy for so long, began to fade from existence. Not through direct confrontation, not through superior firepower, but through careful planning, precise timing, and the wisdom to know exactly when to strike. "Send word to the Council," he ordered quietly. "Tell them that sometimes the best way to win a fight is to make sure you're fighting on your own terms." 1 month after the battle, the Galactic Council chamber was packed beyond capacity. Representatives from every known species had gathered to witness something unprecedented. The first public appearance of the refugees from the void entity. Captain Miller stood at attention beside Ambassador Walker as the massive view screen showed the refugee ship, now safely anchored in the prepared sanctuary. Its dark surface had begun to change, showing swirls of color that the refugees explained were signs of healing and contentment. The council leader raised all 4 arms for silence. "Today we acknowledge not just a victory, but a lesson learned. The defeat of the destroyers was not achieved through superior firepower or brave sacrifices, but through careful planning and tactical wisdom." The reptilian warrior representative, now missing part of its tail from a close encounter with the destroyers, stepped forward. Its voice was different now, more thoughtful, less aggressive. "We were wrong," it announced, surprising everyone. "We called the humans cowards because they would not fight as we did. But our way would have led to defeat. Their caution saved billions of lives." A soft light filled the chamber as the refugee representative appeared, a being of crystalline energy, carefully contained in a protective field. Its voice chimed like musical bells through the translation system. "For centuries we ran," it said. "We watched mighty civilizations fall because they would not run with us. They chose to stand and fight, to die with honor. But the humans..." The crystalline form shifted, creating patterns of light that indicated joy in their language. The humans understood. They saw that our running was not cowardice, but survival. And they taught us that survival could become victory. Miller thought back to the battle. The destroyers had been so focused on their prey, so certain of their power, that they never considered they were being led into a trap. The remaining destroyers had fled the galaxy, their forces broken, their aura of invincibility shattered. Ambassador Walker stepped forward. "We learned long ago on Earth that true courage takes many forms. Sometimes it means charging forward. Sometimes it means waiting, watching, preparing. The wise warrior knows which approach each situation demands." The refugee representative chimed again. "We have decided to stay, if you will have us. Our ship needs time to heal. And our people..." The lights in its crystalline form danced. "Our people are tired of running. The humans have shown us that there are alternatives to endless flight." The council leader nodded. "The sanctuary zone will be your permanent home, protected by the combined fleets of all our peoples. And speaking of protection," it turned to face Miller. "Captain, step forward." Miller moved to the center of the chamber, wondering what was coming. "The Council has received an unusual number of requests," the leader continued. 17 different species have asked for human tactical advisors. It seems our reputation for cautious wisdom has spread. A ripple of amusement went through the chamber. Even the warrior representatives joined in the gentle laughter. Additionally, the leader raised its voice slightly. The refugees have shared significant technological knowledge with us. Their centuries of running taught them much about survival, about energy manipulation, about faster-than-light travel. They offer this knowledge freely, asking only that we use it wisely. Miller looked up at the massive view screen, where the void entity, no, the refugee ship, was displaying ever more complex patterns of color. From enemies to allies, from hunters to teachers, from refugees to citizens, all because someone took the time to watch and learn instead of attack. The council leader's crystalline form caught the light as it turned to address the full chamber. Let this be remembered as the day when we learned that wisdom and courage are not opposites, but partners. When we learned that running away and standing to fight are not the only options. When we learned that sometimes the most powerful weapon is the patience to wait for the right moment. Miller smiled slightly. The cowardly humans had changed the galaxy's understanding of bravery. Not bad for a species that supposedly lacked courage. The refugee representative's final words echoed through the chamber. The humans taught us that true victory comes not to those who fight the hardest, but to those who fight the smartest. We look forward to learning more from these wise warriors who know when to charge forward, when to step back, and most importantly, when to think.